Nadie. Can you switch on the mic? The mic will not fit in my phone. It will not fit in my phone because that is iPhone 15.
I just got one and I was like, I have to change everything. us in our evening prayer. We have a class now. It'll go for another hour or so. You're absolutely welcome to stay. And we're going to read, not a class, we'll read and reading and discussion of this amazing text, which the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. You can turn the lights up all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, turn it up all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, good. So, so I can see the book. This book, which is a record of the doings and teachings.
Other one.
Oh yeah. Of Sri Ramakrishna and and how he interacted with his disciples. A great illumined spiritual teacher who was bringing illumination to others and to us as well. And so it's wonderful to read about his life and his teachings and put ourselves in his company and get his instructions for deepening our spiritual life. So we traditionally open with a Sanskrit chant. Om Tava Kathamritam Bhakta Jivanam Kavihiriritam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadadatam Bhuvigrananti Bhuvivadana. O Lord, the nectar of your words gives life to those scorched by the world. Those words which have been declared by the knowers of truth dispel our ignorance. The very hearing of them is beneficial. Your words are beautiful, pleasing to the ear, pleasing to the heart. They are inexhaustible in the benefit they confer. Those who recount them on earth are the givers of the highest and the best. This verse is from where? Pop quiz?
Bhagavata Puranam by the
Okay, and
Gopi.
okay, so the gopis.
Gopi.
The gopis were separated from Sri Krishna, and they're longing for him, and they're wondering where is he, and they sing this, what they call the Gopi Gita, the song of the gopis, and one of the verses is this verse, and it's so appealing, and it's a kind of, you can't fully translate it because this kathamritam, it's difficult to translate because the words are so rich with meaning. Because amrita means both nectar and immortality. Both nectar and immortality. So tava, your, kathamritam, katha means your words, your teachings, also talking about you, descriptions of you, descriptions of your life. So it covers both. So kathamritam, the life-giving, that nectar of your words and teachings and talks about you, which gives us eternal life, which shows us, which brings us to know our true self, which is that we are immortal, we are not bodies, we are spirit, and your words bring that to us. So that's the kind of idea of this beautiful verse. And the recorder of this book, as most of you probably know, he called his book Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita. So taking it from this verse, and he had printed in the opening page of his book, the original in Bengali, this verse in each volume of it. So I'm just going to be, we're going to open the book to a place that feels okay and see what Sri Ramakrishna has to tell us. We're going to go to the visit to the Sinti Brahmo Samaj, and the date is October 19, 1884. Brahmo Samaj was a reform Hindu movement started by Raja Ram Mohan Roy in the 1850s or 18, so something like that. And It was very popular at that time among the intelligentsia, the intellectuals and the highly educated and all of that, and they had some good social reforms, but they were against image worship, and they were against some of the traditions of traditional Hinduism. So Sri Ramakrishna had a close friendship with many of the Brahmo devotees. So he went to one of the branches of the Brahmo Samaj in which is I guess it's a town near Calcutta. On this day, Sri Ramakrishna again visited the Sinti Brahmo Samaj. It was the occasion of the autumn festival of the Samaj, which was being celebrated at Beni Madhav Pal's garden house. Samaj, of course, means like society or something, and Brahma means the society of Brahman, you can say. The hall was decorated with flowers and greens, flags and festoons of various colors. Outside, the blue autumn sky with its fleecy clouds was reflected in the water of the lake. Sri Ramakrishna arrived at 4:30 in the afternoon. Entering the hall, he bowed down before the altar. So one thing that Sri Ramakrishna would find, how did he behave? He wasn't a member of the Brahmo Samaj, but when he would enter the hall of the Brahmo Samaj, he would bow before the altar. Now it wasn't a traditional Hindu altar, there are no deities, there's no symbols, there's not even an Om sign. It's just the altar from where the teacher, the acharya, the preacher of the Brahmo Samaj would give his sermon. But Sri Ramakrishna would bow down here also. He would bow down everywhere. He would salute. Of course, it's not sure that he went into a church, but he would salute a church from outside. Mm-hmm. He would mosque. He would salute a mosque. Everywhere God's name is recited, everywhere that people pray, worship, that place was holy to him. So here also at the Brahmo Samaj, he would bow down. And some of his disciples asked him, well, why are you bowing down here? No, he would say, it's a holy place. Anywhere spiritual life is discussed, it becomes a holy place. So he bowed down before the altar. The Brahmo devotees, among whom could be noticed Vijay and Trailokya, sat around him. A sub-judge, who was a member of the Brahmo Samaj, was with them. Yeah, there was a lot of sort of highly placed government officials and all of that in the Sri Ramakrishna was equally comfortable and at home with highly placed big government officials and super educated intellectuals, and poor, have nothing people like the person who swept swept the street in the Dakshineshwar Kali. Well, I was thinking person who cleans the toilets, the latrines in the Kali temple, who was at the very bottom of Hindu society. He was equally comfortable with all of them. So now he's having satsang, he's having a holy gathering with the Brahmo devotees. And Trailokya was entertaining the devotees with his melodious music. Trailokya, interesting, he was a gifted musician and gifted composer, and he wrote many songs, a number of which are still sung today in our tradition. And he took inspiration from the life of Sri Ramakrishna. And this is one of those songs that he was inspired by Sri Ramakrishna to write. Sri Ramakrishna loved his songs. And he had a pseudonym for, what do you call it when an author takes on a
nom de plume.
Pen name.
Yeah, nom de plume, the pen name, right? The French. Right? His pen name was, what was it? Oh, now it's just gone out of my mind. He had a pen name which was Chiranjeev Sharma. So if you ever hear of one Chiranjeev Sharma, and that's him. That's his actual name was Trailokya Sanyal, Trailokya. Mm-hmm. So Sri Ramakrishna says to him, "That song of yours, O mother, make me mad with thy love. I enjoy very much. Won't you sing it?" Trailokya sang, "O mother, make me mad with thy love. What need have I of knowledge or reason? Make me drunk with thy love's wine, O thou who stealest thy bhakta's hearts. Drown me deep in the sea of thy love. Here in this world, this madhouse of thine, some laugh, some weep, some dance for joy. Jesus, Buddha, Moses, Gauranga, all are drunk with the wine of thy love. O Mother, when shall I be blessed by joining their blissful company? So this is, perhaps many of you have heard this song or heard a recording of it. That famous Kali Sangeet, Shama Sangeet singer sings it so well, Pannalal Bhattacharya. He was an extremely gifted singer and who was lived long enough to get his songs recorded when the old 78 records were coming out, so it must have been the 1930s probably. He recorded a number of these precious songs which we still can get. And one thing I love about them is that they're very simple. There's no fancy, nowadays the music that comes, the devotional music that comes out of Calcutta, it's full of electronic music, organs and all fancy, and maybe a whole slew of several violinists, or maybe it's a fake violins on the synthesizer or whatever. And it loses something here, just very simple. Harmonium, maybe a violin, a sitar, and tabla or a pakwaj or khol or some drum, and the little hand cymbals, the kanjani. Very simple. And yet you can hear they're all expert musicians, all perfect time. Anyhow, this song goes, I couldn't learn the song, the rhythm is really tough, I haven't been able to fully learn the bit. Amai de ma pagol kore, Brahma moi de ma pagol kore, Brahma moi de ma pagol kore. That means the pagol, that mad, make me mad, oh mother, make me mad. So this, of course, is directed to Divine Mother. Sri Ramakrishna worshipped Mother, he worshipped Krishna, he worshipped Shiva, he worshipped Jesus, he worshipped every manifestation of the divine, but he always came back to Mother. So, and this idea that if once we taste that love, then analysis and scholarship and theology and all these things actually don't mean anything. Once we taste that love, we realize that all that theology is nonsense. It's pointless. It was like, who was the great Christian theologian who wrote tomes and tomes of theological, Summa Theologica? Who was that?
Was it Thomas Aquinas or St. Augustine?
Yes, I think it's Thomas Aquinas.
I think it's Thomas Aquinas.
And at the very end, he must have had some experience, some deep spiritual awakening. And it's still considered one of the foundations of Christian theology. And yet he wrote, he remarked that everything I've written is a straw. So he must have tasted something higher and realized that all these words about God are pointless in the end when you go further. All right, it's useful. At least we're keeping our minds on God. We're thinking about the divine. We're trying to understand. But actually, it goes beyond understanding when we touch Divine Mother, when we touch the divine and realize actually that God is love, is infinite love, and we become one with that. Then all that knowledge and reason is worthless. And so the prayer here in this song is, make me drunk with the wine of your love, and drown me in the sea of your love. And then this world is like a madhouse. All are mad after various things, but make me mad with love for you. And then it includes this, the great teachers of 4 traditions: Jesus, Buddha, Moses, Gauranga. Means Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, and Hinduism are included here. Jesus, Buddha, Moses, and Gauranga, all are drunk with the wine of your love. O Mother, when shall I be blessed by joining their blissful company? So it's a very touching song. And Sri Ramakrishna would go into ecstasy hearing the song. So here, yes, as he listened to the song, the master's mind underwent a transformation, and presently he went into deep samadhi. sometimes we read this so many times in the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna enters a state of deep ecstasy, of complete absorption in God, that he becomes unconscious of the outer world. And we read it so many times, we think, oh, okay, he would go into samadhi again. But it's actually very rare state to experience. And those who were with him, their eyes would become glued to him. They would be just mesmerized being in his company, and then he would experience this deep ecstasy, and he would lift everyone in the room up with him to the extent that they were fit for that. They would also experience that joy. Coming down a little to the plane of the sense world, he gave instruction to the devotees. His mind was still charged with the divine experience. His words were spoken as if in a state of intoxication. Gradually, he became again fully conscious of the world. Sri Ramakrishna says, "O Mother, I don't want the bliss of divine inebriation. I shall eat siddhi." To the devotees, by siddhi, I mean the attainment of the spiritual goal, and not one of the 8 occult powers. The word means both perfection, and also it refers to the various powers that the yogis get through their yoga practice, like becoming invisible, making themselves tiny, or making themselves big, and all those kind of powers. So, he says, by siddhi I mean the attainment of the spiritual goal, and not one of the 8 occult powers. About the occult powers, Sri Krishna said to Arjuna, "Friend, if you find anyone who has acquired even one of the 8 powers, then know for certain he will not realize me. For powers surely beget pride, and God cannot be realized if there is the slightest trace of pride." The monks of the Ramakrishna order, but we obviously were following Sri Ramakrishna, so we also neither do we cultivate any kind of powers, nor do we claim to have them. But the traditional monks of India, particularly the wandering monks who go from place to place, the sadhus, they are expected to have some powers by the general population. And if a monk doesn't have them, well, are they genuine sadhus? Because they don't have these powers. So apparently, one of our monks was talking with some of these sadhus and said, "You, Ramakrishna, you don't have any siddhis. You don't have any powers. What about that?" And then he replied, "Yes, but we have the power of purity." And then the monks would, "Ah, yes, that's true. Power of purity, that's good. So apparently he was able to at least partially mollify them. But yeah, there's this tradition that you go to a sadhu, he should be able to tell your future, or he should be able to bless you that you get a son, or get a promotion in your job, or something like that.
Give you a lotto number.
Give you a lotto number. So we don't have those powers, we don't cultivate them. Sri Ramakrishna warns us, because it is a part of traditional Hinduism that the yogis, they get these powers, and the scriptures are full of also of devotees doing intense spiritual disciplines, intense tapasya, in order to get some power, in order to kill an enemy or do something. And meanwhile, the enemy is also doing the tapasya, so he gets the power to resist the onslaught, and etc. All those things. They get all for. So there is this idea that, oh, we should get some power. So Ramakrishna says, well, yes, you can get them. That's true, but then you miss the way. Then you don't find that beloved. You don't find God, because you get pride. Oh, I can read fortunes. I can heal people with a touch. There's one well-known so-called Swami who was quite famous and now quite infamous, who definitely has some powers to heal illnesses. I've heard of a number of instances, and I know some monks who knew him. For a short time, he joined our order before he left, and then made himself famous and all that. And he has some powers. He's also, don't even mention his name. We're not mentioning any names. But he also had a big fall, and it's very sad. And obviously, it's a perfect example. Powers beget pride. So want to be careful about those. He says that powers surely beget pride, and God cannot be realized if there is the slightest trace of pride. According to a certain school of thought, there are 4 classes of devotees: the pravartaka, the sadhaka, the siddha, and the siddha of the siddha. He who has just begun religious life is a pravartaka. Such a person puts the denominational marks on the body and forehead, wears a rosary around the neck, and scrupulously follows other outer conventions. So this is the beginning. In the beginning of spiritual life, we follow all the traditional outer observances. And then the next stage. This school of thought, what's this school of thought? Isn't this one of the bowel schools, I think? I'm not sure. He doesn't say here which school it is, but he discusses this several times in the book. The sadhaka has advanced farther. His or her desire for outer show has become less. He or she longs for the realization of God and prays to God sincerely. He repeats the name of God and calls on him with a guileless heart. So this is a serious seeker who the external observances are not so important anymore. Whether the marks are put on the forehead or the clothing is put on in the right way or all these external observances, not so important now. Longing has awakened in this person's heart. So this is when spiritual life starts in earnest. The beginner is starting, learning, but hasn't entered into spiritual life in earnest. It's when that yearning awakens that spiritual life really starts. And so that desire for outer show has become less. It's funny how this desire to be, it's a perfectly natural and normal human desire to be noticed, to be seen. For people, we live in community, we live in relationship with other people, and when we're in a group, we want some praise, we want some recognition. And if we're practicing spiritual disciplines, well, maybe we like people to notice also how straight we're sitting when we meditate, or how long we can sit for meditation for a whole hour. Other people, they get up after half an hour. They get restless and they get up after. We can sit for a whole hour. Anybody noticing me? The temple notice me sit for so long? See, so Sri Ramakrishna says the sadhakas who have that quality of sattva, of peace and humility, they will meditate for a long time, but not in the temple where everyone can see them. They'll meditate in their room under the mosquito curtain late at night, so nobody knows they're meditating. Then they sleep in the morning, they sleep late, and everybody thinks, oh, he doesn't sleep well, so he gets up late in the morning. No, he's been meditating half the night. That's why he or she sleeps in a little in the morning, but nobody knows. Keeps a secret. And this is actually, we just read this on Christmas Eve, the teachings of Jesus, that the publicans, they go on the street corner and they pray in front of everybody so everyone can see how devoted they are. Whereas he says, when you pray, go into your closet, pray in secret. So that's the same teaching, exactly the same teaching. Okay, now, then we said, then he goes on. There were the 4 stages, right? The Pararthaka, the Sadhaka, the Siddha, and the Siddha of the Siddha. The Siddha. Now, whom should we call the Siddha? One who has the absolute conviction that God exists and is the sole doer. One who has seen God. All right, we would think this is the goal of life, is to see God, to know God directly. So we would think this would be the final goal. Siddha, but Sri Ramakrishna takes it one step further. Siddha of the Siddha. Who is the Siddha of the Siddha? One who has not merely seen God, but has intimately talked with him as Father, Son, or Beloved. Sri Ramakrishna, in other places, he contrasts jnana and the vijnana. Jnana is to know that God is, to have experienced God directly. But vijnana is a richer knowing. One talks with God. He would say, to know without doubt that fire exists in wood is jnana. But to light the fire and cook your meal and eat it, that is vijnana. So he often comes to this, that there's no end to spiritual life. It's a continual going forward. Oh, here he gives this example. It is one thing to believe beyond a doubt that fire exists in wood, but it is quite another to get the fire from the wood, cook rice with its help, appease one's hunger, and so be satisfied. These are two entirely different things. No one can put a limit to spiritual experience. If you refer to one experience, there is another beyond that, and still another, and so on. This is another one of Ramakrishna's sort of hallmark teachings, that don't put any limit to God. Don't put any limit to spiritual life. To say that God is this much and no further. That's why I always feel a little irritated with people, people, they're very sincere, but they say God is this much. God is, the Supreme God is Krishna. Actually the bigoted Vaishnavas and the bigoted Christians are more or less the same. The ones say Jesus is the only way, and then if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to the hot place forever. And the Vaishnavas say if you don't accept Krishna, there's no salvation for you. The only difference is that at least the Vaishnavas say you'll have to be born again because there's no eternal hell in Hinduism. But that narrow, yes, they have tremendous devotion. That's good. They have many good qualities. But this putting a limit to God, to say, oh, it's only this much, it can't be anything more than this. God can't be more than Krishna. That's what he would smash that idea. No one can put a limit to spiritual experience. If you refer to one experience, there is another beyond that, and still another, and so on. And then he enters again an ecstatic mood, and he says, referring to the Brahmos, they are Brahmajnanis. They believe in the formless deity. That is good. Now he's going to hammer on this idea again, though, because Brahmas were limited in the sense that they believed only that God could be formless. They did not believe in any of the forms of God. To the Brahmo devotees, he says, be firm in one ideal, either in God with form or in the formless God. Then alone will you realize God, otherwise not. With firm and unwavering belief, the followers of God with form will realize him, as will those who speak of him as formless. You may eat a cake with icing, either straight or sidewise. It will taste sweet either way. And everybody laughs. So he's giving us this teaching of Ishta Nishtha, that one pointed dedication to your ideal. We choose one path, we choose one that we are called, really. We are called to approach the divine in a particular form or manifestation or concept or name, and focus on that. We recognize that God can be formless, can have form, and God comes in the form of the infinite, all-pervading light of consciousness, and also as Krishna, and as Jesus, and as Buddha, and as Allah. And we say, yes, but I'm not going to go today, I'm going to call on Allah, and tomorrow on Kali. Well, I'm not going to get deep. I'm not going to be able to dive deep. So Sri Ramakrishna always wants us to dive deep. So stick to one path and dive deep. So he's telling them because he knows they don't accept God with form, and in fact they have to sign a pledge that they won't bow down to any deity in a temple. Idols, as they used to call them. We understand idol is not the right term. That's term from Christianity, I guess, Judaism, Christianity. So he continues, but you must have firm conviction. You must pray to him wholeheartedly. Do you know what the God of worldly people is like? It is like children saying to one another while at play, I swear by God. They have learnt the word from the quarrels of their aunts or grandmothers. So aunts and the older women of the family are having a quarrel, and they'll say, I swear by God. And so the kids hear that and they say that also. So that's the God of worldly people. Or it is like God to a dandy. The dandy, all spick and span, his lips red from chewing betel leaf, walks in the garden, cane in hand, and, plucking a flower, exclaims to his friend, ah, what a beautiful flower God has made. But this feeling of a worldly person is momentary. It lasts as long as a drop of water on a red-hot frying pan. Not that this is wrong. If we really can look deeply at a flower and just see it and drop all our thoughts of future and past and look at that flower, we can see the divine. That's God manifest. Look at the perfection of a flower. How amazing. Who could make that? So we can get spiritual inspiration, no doubt, just by looking at a flower. What's the poem? Who knows the poem?
Is it that Wordsworth poem? There's more knowledge to be had from all, than in like a vernal wood than in all those books or something like that.
Yeah, but the particular line I'm thinking of is the universe in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour.
Oh.
What's the first part of it? The flower is there, that's why I'm thinking of it. It's not coming to mind.
Yeah.
Somebody Google it. Susie, Google it. The Wordsworth poem, Eternity in an Hour. And give us the first line.
Wait, what is it called?
Eternity in an Hour, Wordsworth. Google something like that, you'll get the poem. Read it to us. See, these are, our brains are atrophying because now we can always Google something. We can't remember things anymore. But we can't Google God. We have to dive deep down inside to find God.
Is it the one that says Algorithm of
Yeah. How's it go?
to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven and a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour.
Yes, that's it. To see, how's it go? To see
A
world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower. Hold eternity in the palm of your hand.
Infinity.
Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Beautiful, it's a little mystic. It's a beautiful poem. So heaven in a wildflower. So yes, you can. But for the dandy who's more interested in looking good and all that, just simply going to the garden, how beautiful flower God has made, and then just toss it aside and go on with his friends' chit chat and all that. Okay. You must be firm in one ideal. Dive deep. Otherwise, you cannot get the gems at the bottom of the ocean. You cannot pick up the gems if you only float on the surface. With these words, the master sang in the sweet voice that had bewitched the hearts of devotees like Keshav. Mentioning Keshav here, of course, because he was one of the prominent leaders of the Brahma Samaj. Dive deep, O mind, dive deep in the ocean of God's beauty. If you descend to the uttermost depths, there you will find the gem of love. The devotees felt as if they were in paradise itself. See, Ramakrishna's voice was so sweet, but it wasn't just that they were hearing his sweet voice. He was also lifting them up. They were getting drawn into the mood of that song, the bhava of that song, and this song is a charming. It's a delightful song. It's a bow song, and I think this song appears more than any other in this book. So Ramakrishna used it a lot as a teaching tool, both as a teaching tool and as an inspiration. You know that you've heard me sing it. Dubba 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 dub shagore amar mon. Hare dubba 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 dub shagore amar mon. Tola tola patal kunjle, tola tola patal kunjle, pabire prema ratna dham, pabire prema ratna dham, dubba 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 dub shagore amar mon. So very, dub of course means dive. So dive, dive, dive.
खोज 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 ले पावे हृदय माझे वृंदावन खोज 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 ले पावे
हृदय माझे वृंदावन दीप 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 ज्ञानेर बाती दीप 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 ज्ञानेर बाती জ্বলবে হৃদয় অনুক্ষণ জ্বলবে হৃদয় অনুক্ষণ ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে আমার মন হরে ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে আমার মন ডাঙে 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 ডাঙায় ডিঙে চালায় আবার সে কমজোর ডাঙে 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 ডাঙায় ডিঙে চালায় আবার সে কমজোর কবির বলে শন 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 কবির বলে শন 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 ভাব গুরুর শ্রীচরণ ভাব গুরুর শ্রীচরণ ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে আমার মন হরে ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে আমার মন হরে ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে আমার মন Seek, go seek, go seek. Seek and you will find in your heart the true Vrindavan, where Sri Krishna had his play. Light up, O mind, light up true wisdom's lamp, and let it shine unceasingly within your heart. Who is it who steers your body? Who is it who pilots your life in this world? Kubir, the author of the song Kubir, says, listen, 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 I'm telling you, meditate on the feet of your Guru. Meditate on the feet of your Guru. That's the song, Bao song. Very a charming song. And Sri Ramakrishna used to sing it all the time. So he goes on to explain, giving the Brahmas encouragement in their spiritual life. Dive deep. Learn to love God. Plunge into divine love. You see, I have heard how you pray. Why do you Brahmas dwell so much on the glories of God? Is there such great need if you're saying over and over again, O God, you have created the sky, the great oceans, the lunar world, the solar world, and the stellar world? Everybody is wonderstruck at the mere sight of a rich man's garden house. People become speechless at the sight of the trees, the flowers, the ponds, the drawing room, the pictures. But alas, how few are they who seek the owner of all these. Only one or two inquire after him. He who seeks God with a longing heart can see him, talk to him as I am talking to you. Believe my words when I say that God can be seen. But to whom am I saying these words? Who will believe me? The Brahmas, I guess they used to pray as a way of, a sort of way, oh God, you have created the oceans, the infinite oceans, this entire earth is your creation, the beautiful trees of the forest, or you have manifested these, like that, to give an idea of the infinite power of God, I suppose. And Sri Ramakrishna is like, yeah, you're go on describing the glories, seek the owner of the garden. Don't just go on praising the garden. You can actually talk to the owner if you just seek. But you don't do that. So he's always encouraging them to go deep. He found that Brahmas were not really diving deep, most of them. So that's why he longed for some close disciples to whom he could really pour all his teachings, and they would take it, and of course he got them all. So his inner circle of disciples, both the monks and the householders who were his intimate disciples, they were the ones who could dive deep, and they did. Can one find God in the sacred books? By reading the scriptures, one may feel at the most that God exists. But God does not reveal himself to a person unless that person dives deep. Only after such a plunge, after the revelation of God through his grace, is one's doubt destroyed. You may read scriptures by the thousands and recite thousands of texts, but unless you plunge into God with yearning of heart, you will not comprehend him. By mere scholarship, you may fool people, but not God. Scriptures and books, what can one achieve with these alone? Nothing can be realized without his grace. Strive with a longing heart for his grace. Through his grace you will see him, and he will talk to you. One thing about the language here, it's an interesting fact of the Bengali language, that there's no, the third person pronoun there's no distinction between masculine and feminine third person pronoun. And the word is she, which sounds kind of like halfway between he and she. So when it's translated in English, we have he and she, but in this translation, we could just as correctly translate it as, believe my words when I say that God can be seen. Unless you plunge into God with a yearning of heart, you will not comprehend her. Equally good translation, because Ramakrishna was most often was thinking of God as Divine Mother, as she. So, but because Bengali is there's no distinction, so it could be translated either way. And Swami Nikhilananda was working in the late 1930s in America, so he stuck with him and he. But now and then we can change it to she. God does not reveal herself to a person unless that person dives deep. Through her grace, you will see her, and she will talk to you. Now we get some conversation. That's the nice thing, that there were people who would ask questions. So our questions also can be asked in this, we can get these ideas. So the sub-judge asked him, "Sir, does God show more grace to one than to another? If so, he can be accused of the fault of partiality." Okay, that's an objection. If you can't realize God without her grace, and some people realize and some don't, so then God must be partial, must be showing her grace to some people and not to others. How do you explain that? So Sri Ramakrishna doesn't like these questions. He says, "What are you saying? Do you mean to say that the moon and a glowworm are the same, though both give light?" Ishwar Vidyasagar asked me the same question. He said, "Is it a fact, sir, that God gives more power to one and less to another?" "God," I said, "exists in every being as the all-pervading spirit. He is in the ant as well as in me. But there are different manifestations of his power in different beings. If all are the same, then why have we come here to see you, attracted by your renown? Have you grown a pair of horns? Oh no, it is not that. You have compassion, you have scholarship. There is a greater degree of these virtues in you than in others. That is the reason you are so well known. Don't you see that there are men who single-handed can defeat 100 persons? Again, one man takes to his heels in fear of another. You see such a person too. If there are not different manifestations of power in different beings, then why did people respect Keshav Sen so much? It is said in the Gita that if a person is respected and honored by many, whether it be for scholarship or music or oratory or anything else, then you may know for certain that such a person is endowed with a special divine power. So on the one hand, Sri Ramakrishna said, well, yes, people have different degrees of power, of strength. But that's not, we could object here, wait, he didn't answer the question. The question was, does God show more grace to one than another? Not, does God give more power to one than another? So that's a good question. Because Sri Ramakrishna typically regarding grace, he has the what parable would he use? What example would he use?
Some will be fed in the morning.
What?
Some will be fed in the
Oh,
morning.
someone. But I'm thinking particularly of a windy story.
Oh yes, yes. The wind of grace is always blowing.
Sail, you have to set this.
You have to set the sail. A sailboat is on a lake, and the wind is blowing, but it's not moving. It's not going to move an inch until you hoist the sail. So like that, the wind of God's grace is always blowing. It's right here, but if we want to catch it, we have to work to catch it. We have to open our hearts. We have to do spiritual practices. We have to make ourselves fit to receive that grace. So that is usually how I think Sri Ramakrishna would have answered this question. But today he goes more on the side of power, of different manifestations of power in different people. And then there's an interesting little interaction that happens right after this. One of the Brahmo devotees says to the sub-judge, why don't you accept what he says? It looks like the sub-judge is probably looking kind of skeptical, like, yeah, well, I don't know, I still don't believe you. So he says, why don't you accept what he says? And Sri Ramakrishna says sharply to this Brahmo, what sort of man are you to accept words without conviction? Why? That is hypocrisy. I see, you are only a counterfeit. So he gives a pretty hard blow to this Brahmo, and he was much embarrassed, it says. So, interesting. He's giving a teaching to the sub-judge, and the sub-judge is not accepting it. But Sri Ramakrishna wouldn't insist, he would never want someone to accept something without actually having the understanding and the conviction that it's true. So he doesn't want just the lip service that, okay, I believe you or something. So that's a beautiful little interaction there. This might be a good place to stop because I've been talking for almost an hour, and you have been listening for almost an hour. Any comments or questions?
I don't have a question here. Two questions.
Tarani has a question?
If you have powers, can you also not have pride?
Well, let's look at Sri Ramakrishna. He was completely humble, and he also had powers. So the answer to your question would have to be yes, but you have to be someone like Sri Ramakrishna. Very interesting, you know what happened at a certain point, Sri Ramakrishna offered to Naren, the future Swami Vivekananda. He said, I have all these powers, but I have no use for them. I want to transfer them to you. And what did Naren say, do you know? He said, he asked him, will they help me to know God? And Sri Ramakrishna said, well, no, they won't help you to know God, but they can help you in your work in this world. And then Naren said, then I'm not interested, because I want God. So that was a test. It was probably a test, and he passed the test with flying colors. So that's...
I ended up with some of them anyways.
He ended up with some of them anyways afterwards, yes, of course he did. That's Shama.
Yeah, I would ask you, there are some that are starting, I mean, not have much background, but starting to read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So where should they start? What is it, for them to, from the very beginning? I mean, there's some special chapters you can suggest so they can get some kind of background, some kind of something to go on.
People read it in different ways, no? Some people dive in anywhere, but the first time I went through it from beginning to end.
Okay.
And that's, in a way, it's helpful that way because you follow the recorder. You follow his first meetings with Sri Ramakrishna. Are fascinating. How he first meets him and starting to learn. So we learn along with M. And Sri Ramakrishna gets many of the most important basic teachings right at the beginning. He recognizes M as one of his chosen disciples, and he gives him these instructions. And for someone who's not familiar with Sanskrit, there's a lot of words that get introduced, and when you first cross them, then you have to. I remember first time I read this book, I was flipping back constantly to the glossary. There's a pretty good glossary with a lot of definitions. So I keep coming across words I didn't know, and then I look it up, and so yeah, I think Natarani, you said you had 2 questions. What was the second question? You forgot?
Yeah, I had a question. Maybe you answered it, but that was one thing I would always think about is he used to worship the Divine Mother, right? But then often in the book he would always say him, and that was a little bit confusing to me also.
Yeah.
But do you attribute that to what you just said
It's a
about
translation. In Bengali, it's she and dan, and it means he. It also means she or his or hers. It doesn't. There's no gender attached to the word in Bengali, which is very interesting. It's one of the few languages, perhaps, that's the case. So that's why the translators have to be traitors in a sense to the original language, because there's no way to translate that unless you come up with a new word in English. And I guess people do try to do that. Nowadays people use they sometimes. Some people don't want to be called he or she, they want to be called they. But it's awkward. I mean,
especially when referring to God.
Yeah, especially when referring to God, yeah. Because you think of God as one, right? And they tend to think of as plural. So I would prefer coming up with a new word that would cover both he and or she and both and neither. I mean, the divine is beyond both male and female, all conceptions, and yet manifests in so many different ways. And for some people, some people didn't have a great relationship with their mothers, and maybe they prefer to think of God as Father, and that's beautiful. And other people, they feel closer to the idea of God as Mother. That's also beautiful. Both are good. And as you know, somewhere here he says as son, you can talk to God as a child. There are probably millions of devout Hindus who look on God as their own son, as Gopal, the baby Krishna. It's amazing. And Christians do it once a year for a day. But on Christmas Eve, we also feel that tender love for the baby Jesus, no? And so was this photograph taken down? Did you have a Christmas Eve and it fell or something? Yeah. You look at the frame.
I changed. I saw that.
Yeah, we got it today. I went out to get a frame. This is a painting that Sri Ramakrishna saw at Jaddu Malik's house. It's a reproduction of a painting that was at Jaddu Malik's house, and he saw the painting. And he saw a light coming out of the painting, and it enveloped him, and he went into ecstasy, and he felt that light shining in him. So he always felt that Jesus was an avatar, incarnation, and so that particular the original painting, believe it or not, hangs. Anybody know where that original painting is?
Hollywood.
No, it's in the monastery in San Francisco. So almost no one can see it because no one's allowed in the monastery, and it's big. It's bigger than these photographs. It's really quite a big painting. It came up for auction at some point, and the authorities in India, they couldn't afford it, so they asked Swami Ashokananda to buy it at auction. So he did, and then he brought it to America. And restored it and hung it in the monastery. So it's there, at least we know it's safe, but I feel it's a little sad that no one can see it. I've seen it, but pretty much only monks can see it because they were very strict in the San Francisco monastery that they only allow monks in the monastery. And maybe a few very close devotees might get a chance to come in sometimes, otherwise. And they don't allow women in the monastery, very, very strict monastery, no women allowed. So. Thank you. Om Shanti. Shanti Shanti Hari Om Tat Sat Shri